Hi, good morning. It's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks. Today I've got a fantastic guest list of panels, not guest list of panels, but a panel of guests, and a good cross-section of the business community. So we have Sam Holliday, Business Development Manager for the Federation of Small Business for Gloucestershire and beyond. We've got Paul Soden, MD and CEO of Café Rene Group. Steve Gardner-Collins, Director of Hatton Group and Visit Gloucestershire. Hopefully I've got that right, Stephen. And I know there's lots of other titles that you do as well. And then also I'd really love to welcome Esther Croft, Development Director at the Reef Group. And the Reef Group are the guys who are involved in rebuilding and reshaping King's Square. So good morning and welcome you all. Thank you ever so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we'd just like to start off with the main news. It is full of lockdown, it's full of coronavirus, it's full of everything else. A little bit less of Trump, thank goodness. Sam, can you start us off, please?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of papers here, been following the various news bulletins, and you're right. There's only one story in town, or two aspects of it actually, really, isn't there? There's the tears, and also there's the impending Christmas thing, and the whole tears thing is fascinating. I mean, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say I'm hopeless at science. So I have to listen to the science. I have to believe the science. And I'm one of those people that's completely torn with thinking, well, the science is saying this, so we've got to do it. But then also knowing the nature of my job, I'm dealing with businesses all the time. I'm worried about their very survival. And that's particularly pertinent at the moment because you mentioned that I cover the FSB for Gloucestershire and also for another part of the world, and that's the west of England. And for the first time, Bristol, South Gloucestershire, all on our borders, Western-super-Mare and North Somerset, they've all gone into this third tier. And that is such a blow. I mean, do you imagine all those hospitality places, all those entertainment venues, the hotels and things that we're thinking, well, at least we'll have December. At least we'll have a December to try and get things moving again, taken away from them. So it's creating, obviously, there's so much in the papers, it's creating such a wave and also a bit of a sense of unfairness as well. A lot of people saying, I've been reading in the papers about places in Kent where the vast majority of Kent hasn't got any problems, it seems, but the whole county's been closed down, and there's probably reasons behind that. But it's such a difficult situation. But again, for someone like me, can I turn around and say, no, let's abandon this? No, I don't understand the science. I don't want more people to die. I think we're probably all like that, aren't we? We're all torn between wanting business to get moving again, but also not wanting to make these things worse. And I think the papers reflect that today.
That's right. Is there anything else that's caught your eye as well? You've got a secondary story?
Yeah. Actually, based on the same kind of thing, there's a story in the Times. I'm not sure if you can read the headline talking about Christmas. It says, Americans ignore pleas to stay at home for Thanksgiving. Now, I've got American relatives, and Thanksgiving is a bigger thing for them than than Christmas. It really is. And they estimate that 50 million Americans were on the road yesterday. Now, that I think gives us a bit of a glimpse of what our Christmas is going to be like. Because when they talk about 3 families at Christmas, well, how many people have got lots of different siblings? How many people have got kids at university? How many people are in blended families with stepbrothers, stepsisters and things? To try and get that down to 3 families, I suspect a lot of people, like those 50 million Americans, are basically just going to ignore it. And I fear that we're going to be all having this conversation again in January and February as a result.
I think it's going to be absolutely dreadful, isn't it? Okay, well, that brings us, so thank you ever so much, Sam. Let's bring us into Steve. Hi, Steve.
Morning, Mark.
Thanks for joining us today. What stories have you picked out?
I think the biggest story, as Sam has echoed, is obviously what you can and can't do at Christmas. But there is also a bit of a controversial, technology as it goes. The north-south divide. I think that's one of the biggest conversations to have when you look at how the country is once again divided. Yeah. And it is unfortunate for those businesses and those people that live in that part of the country where they were already in this tier system prior to the national lockdown for 4 weeks, and they continue for another couple of weeks at least on that journey. But yeah, obviously from my perspective with the hospitality industry, what's great actually, the BBC are really good with their graphics, and the most disturbing, as you can imagine, in the middle of that is, with your bubble, you can't go to the pub or restaurant. So businesses are being encouraged to reopen in tier 2, and we're all busy trying to come up with solutions around tier 2 restrictions in our businesses. Yet the biggest blower to all of this is that you can't go to a pub or restaurant with your bubble. So who is our audience over Christmas? Who's actually going to be coming out? I think I've had to, over the last 24 hours, just accept that if you're not joining a bubble, then naturally you will be able to go out for your Christmas Day lunch. But it's going to be hard pressed with hospitality at the size it is in our county to have enough volumes to protect businesses that would otherwise really rely on December as a real uplift in the income.
Well, this is it. They have to make the money in December in order to see
January, get through a difficult January and February.
I'm sure we'll come back to this again.
Yeah, they're my two stories. It is all dominated by coronavirus, I'm afraid.
No, it's okay. That brings us very nicely to Paul. Paul, obviously don't get into too much about your Café Rene. It's 4 or 5 different pubs, restaurants you run, isn't it, around the city? Paul, what's 2 stories have you picked up for us, or a story that's really caught your eye?
Well, I knew it'd be pretty boring or common, but the tier system, obviously, to me, I think it's chaos. The whole, if you try to understand it and work it all out, it's just chaos. I just don't see how it's workable. I don't see how the virus knows which level or tier it's in itself, and so on. And I think we've reached a point now where we have to make some serious decisions. And I think this is political, that the decisions are being made on political basis rather than on medical science and fact. And more people are coming around to the view that there is an alternative way of doing this, an alternative science to it. And so the tier system, to me, I think is unworkable, unmanageable. I just can't see it working. And over Christmas, I think a lot of people are going to do whatever they want to do. And the outfall will probably be somewhere in January where we get another close down. Not that I have a crystal ball, but that's how I see it. The rest of it, obviously, after tiers, all seems to me to relate, obviously, to my own trade, which is a bit selfish. But you can open pubs and can't open pubs. What M&B are suffering at the moment, what other pub companies are suffering at the moment, the indecision, 1 minute we're doing this, 1 minute we're doing the other, then we're open, then we might be in tier 1, then we're in tier 2. So there's a little festive cheer there, and it was described by the Beer and Pub Association as a mockery, and that's my 2 stories.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm sure we'll come back to that very shortly as well. Esther, welcome to Punchline Talks.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm going to probably cover a couple of stories which are slightly different, more focused on I think probably the longer term impact of the pandemic and what's been affecting us over the course of the last 6 to 9 months. And that's this story. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, help young parents pleads Duchess.
Yeah, and I was listening to the radio on the way up onto site this morning, and it just struck me that that the story which focused on the fact that there's been some significant impacts for parents, particularly of young families at home during the COVID period and the lockdown. And they were saying that basically that it's gone up from 38% to 63% who are feeling lonely and lacking really in support. And I think for me, this is something that just indicates how much the effect is going to last for and how long it's going to last for, particularly given the fact that it's well known, well understood that the period of conception to the early years in terms of a children's foundation has absolutely huge, long sort of reaching effects on their health as an adult. So I think I just wanted to sort of focus, I suppose, that obviously the news today about the tiers and the impacts and the immediate impacts on businesses is critical. I think, to be frank, I've kind of almost just started to become a little bit, not jaded, but I've just accepted it. I've gone into that kind of stage that I think, as everybody was saying, that we're going to be, this is going to be long-standing through into next spring, effectively. And I think I'm starting to think about how we are going to start to recover, what are going to be the long-standing impacts. And so that was something that really sort of hit my eye, and what we can do about that and how we can improve it. So that was one story. And then the second one was, again, not necessarily COVID related, so I'm doing things slightly differently. That was about Yeah, that was about electric cars. And that's of interest because it's obviously something we're very focused on in terms of the development at King's Quarter, and ensuring that we've got a really high level of sustainability in the buildings and the car park that we will be hopefully creating. So which will be completely electric enabled across all of the 410 spaces. So it was just interesting that was saying that electric cars are actually only greener than petrol after 50,000 miles. Due to the non-renewable nature of most of the batteries that obviously are being created and produced in order to run them. So just not that I'm a specialist by any stretch of the imagination in battery creation or the science of that, but it just struck me yet again. I suppose ultimately it's still the right thing to do, but it just shows you that the devil's in the detail, and science is you can be looked at in lots of different ways. But that was another one that sort of struck my eye.
Well, it's a bit like the special metals, isn't it? Is it titanium that goes into making the batteries, and then that's very sourced. That's right. And the way it was a report yesterday, I think it was in the Times or the Daily Mail, about how the iPhones, Apple allegedly are making their phones so they break down. You have to renew them, so you can't fix them in a shop. So therefore they have to buy a new one. Which goes against the grain when it comes to sustainability and waste. The big one that I'm going to pick out a couple of stories very, very quickly. The big one for me today is the £40 billion a year black hole in the expenses of the country. It is absolutely going to, well, I've got two children. The future for them is a bit like we've just finished paying off the Second World War, the First World War, and we are going to pay for this forever and a day. I mean, I'll be long gone by the time it's finished paying. And that is a real worry, because sometime or other, we've got to pay this back. We've got to pay it back. It's going to be. There's another one that caught my eye as well. I'm just going to bring is, don't hug Granny. Don't hug Granny this Christmas.
I was just looking at that one. Yeah.
I love to hug my granny, obviously, but I think it's something that they've. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but this kissing and hugging each other, and the closeness of families. I mean, I'm a very kind of tactile person. I'll be honest with you. I always hug and kiss everybody and shake everybody's hand, and business meetings. I always, I'm a very huggy guy, and goodness, I must be a super spreader, is all I can say. We're moving on. That's what really caught my eye. The other one was this: Marks and Spencer's to shut on Boxing Day. I'm sure you've got a view on this, actually, Sam, because thank goodness the big shop is shutting. But I don't think a shop should open on Boxing Day anyway. And then finally, and again, this goes back to you guys in the hospitality trade. Pub shed 1,700 jobs, and it is carnage out there. Here in the daily. The Sun, again, 1,003 pubs bar gone, it says there. And it also links into Disney's story, where they actually let go 33,000 employees at Disney as well, which is very, very sad. So that leads us back to the hospitality trade. Back to you, Steve. And can you give us an overview of your view on what is actually happening in the hotel market at this particular moment? Some can't open.
I think the pubs that can't offer food, there's some discussions going on at the moment, particularly in Gloucester, around can you buy in food if you haven't got the facilities to be able to produce your own food, and therefore resell it as part of a drinking experience. So there was some clarity needed yesterday on that to confirm if that was okay. So there are more pubs that are still around now, but won't survive if they can't turn around the option to be able to resell food with a drink. What you class as a substantial meal was also the last 24 hours. For hotels, residents, obviously, my biggest grey area is challenging tier movement. How do we control that? And also the bubble control again. So taking the two scenarios, when we open ourselves up on the likes of booking.com and Expedia and our own websites, the last time when we were in tier 1, The other parts of the country were going into higher tiers, and our inboxes for reservations were all of those people wanting to get away from their higher tiers. I challenged public health and the police with that question, and the EHO a couple of days ago, and actually we should be rejecting those bookings, but the onus and responsibility becomes a cost constantly to the hotel and the hospitality businesses. The same goes with the bubbles, with the tables of 6. If they say they're from the same household, then it's who takes the bill for the fine if the police rock up and challenge that group of people, and they actually turns out that they're not from the same household. So we are trying our best to stick to the rules, but as Sam and others have echoed, it's hard to keep control of people when they just want to do what they want to do regardless. And there is a lot of people who have said when they've been to the hotels, we don't believe in coronavirus. We think there's conspiracy. We don't think it exists. And those people are the ones that are traveling and coming to stay in the hotels, putting us at risk and all the other guests at risk who are otherwise from a different tier normally. So it is really uncertain times, not helped by opinion, not helped by the science, because do we or don't we believe it? Do we or don't we believe the MPs? So people are doing what they want to do, and ultimately it puts everybody at risk wherever you are.
Do you also think the media is to blame as well? Some of the different, they always seem to question everything, but sometimes the wrong area, or is it just me being a bit tight on Sky and BBC? And
it is the right to an opinion argument, isn't it? Everybody has their own opinion, their own interpretation, their own right to do what they see fit for their own choices, and that is what one person thinks and what another thinks is the argument. And the media don't help because they have a habit of having to be breaking news every 15 minutes, which is the Sky News issue. I mean, there isn't breaking news every 15 minutes, so it gets over-egged, over-discussed, and ultimately Chinese whispers effect. Everybody has then different interpretations, and when you start to challenge it as a business, they get on the defense. It's us that suffer. It's us that get the negative reviews. They turn me away. They didn't let me have my dining experience, or they didn't let me stay at the hotel. I traveled all that way, and now I have to go home. It's a bit like the vaccine argument of going all the way for a vaccine and not being there when you get there. Same applies really. So yeah, it's the right to an opinion, and it's at the same time different viewpoints on every channel you look at, every newspaper you read. So it's really hard for people to get their head around actually what can I do, and do I actually have to stick to the rules, Mr. Cummings?
Okay, thanks very much. Good little dig there, Paul. That leads us very nicely back to your door and the pub trade. And goodness, what are you going to do? What's your view?
Well, Steve said it, not all, but he said so much of it that it's what's the word for it? Difficult to follow him, because he's put it correctly. From a management and operational point of view, it's almost impossible to figure out what to do. We've only had a couple of days to figure it, so give it another sort of couple of days and we'll have worked it out. But if you look at all of the 5 pubs, they're all different, and so we have to sit down and work out how this works for each of the pubs. So 2 of them stay shut in practical terms, unless we can get a sausage roll and a salad on a plate, or get a takeaway brought in. Now, I can play every game there is. I just want to know where the rules are. Now, at the moment, they need to be really clearly identified, because all publicans are going to go for whatever they can to survive, because this is Christmas. And if we don't take it now, we get broken next year. We all know what January and February and some of March is like in the trade. So I see this as utter chaos, management-wise, how I separate tables, how we do, how in the pubs, all of our Christmas trade in Rene was big tables. EIF used to come every year, 50 people. That's all gone. We don't have groups of 6 who will come in. How we work out whether they're in the same bubble. Are we responsible for policing this? And it just goes on and on and on. And if you want to test the boundaries, fine. But we don't as a company. But I'm beginning to wonder whether that is the right way forward, because now it is about survival. I'm so frustrated by it all, and I don't think these rules are enforceable. I don't think the people understand them. I find it difficult to follow them, and I'm not sure how anybody who's on the floor managing a particular shift on a Saturday night is going to be able to control all of this unless they're a genius. And that then asks the question of who's responsible for this. Is it us who are responsible for carrying out these rules, or is it somebody else?
Should be the individual, don't you think?
Yes, well, it should be the individual as well.
Mm.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Hang on, but we live in a libertarian society, and I understand what you're saying, but in libertarian society, people do make their own decisions. It's a fundamental principle that we've lost throughout all of this, and that also concerns me.
Do you think that a lot of people don't have any common sense?
No, I don't. I think a lot of people agree with the Lord Barrington, Great Barrington Declaration, and a lot of other scientists who are trying to point out things that the government's not listening to. Chris Whitty's not listening, Patrick Vallance. I think it's time that we had an alternative sage group that actually looked at the scientific facts of this and got down to the actual facts and statistics which are available from the ONS, so that we can actually get back to realizing there's a political decision to do what we're doing. I don't believe it's a scientific decision.
Thank you, Paul. That's going to go to Sam next, and then Esther, over to you, so we can talk about King Square. Just Sam, your overview. What's the feedback from the Federation of Small Business and from your members that you're hearing from across the county?
Well, I think I would like to stick, if I can, because we do talk to what Paul and Steve has been talking about. Because the next story I was going to highlight was actually a TV review of. I don't know if anyone's been watching the Tom Kerridge piece, which seems the most very likely story to have done. He's obviously from Gloucester. He's visited 4 pubs throughout the country, and he's actually looked at. They were struggling before coronavirus. The timing of his show was unbelievable, because the first 2 was up to March, and the last one I watched last night, which is one reviewed in the paper today, was during coronavirus. And what we have to remember is that these companies were struggling before. And I thought of Paul because Café Rene is a fantastic tradition of live music and stuff, and they feature a pub in Stroud called the Prince Albert, which thrives on its music, and that's what its raison d'etre is. That's where you go for the conviviality of the music and stuff. They've lost the music, and suddenly they're really struggling. And it's a fantastic show because it shows people like us how difficult it is in that industry, because I understand a little bit more now about how the pubco system works, and that's quite frightening. They featured Stroud Brewery on it. I'm sure many of you will know Stroud Brewery and their excellent beers, and the way that the independent pub has to pay more if it's through pubco than if they were buying it themselves. And these are facts and figures that I found fascinating. So I would like to plug that. I mean, last time I was on here, funny enough, I was plugging the series The Crown, which I'm glad I did because it's been brilliant. But now I would say if you want to see how businesses survive through coronavirus, and I actually felt for Tom Kerridge because he's obviously a very wealthy man. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies. But in the middle of the last show last night, I felt even he looked beaten because he runs his own. He's got 3 of his own pubs, and he said, "I set up this particular pub he was in when I was 31." He said, "I just don't know if I've got the energy to do it now." And I thought, wow, that's a man who's probably a millionaire who's got other interests. If you look at the people, they featured a couple in Cornwall, and the woman looked stressed every day of her life from what I was seeing. And last night, I just thought, oh my word, you worry about people's health and physical health and mental health. And I encounter that all the time. I chatted to a business guy on Wednesday it was, from Bristol. And I was going through all the various grants he could apply for. And he said, no, I tried that. I didn't get there. He tried that. And I was running out of things. And I'm thinking I didn't say it. I'm thinking this guy isn't going to get through this. And it's heartbreaking. And I think the Tom Kerridge really encapsulates the things that Paul and Steve have been talking about how hard it is for the pub and hospitality trade. And what's even more confusing, Mark, is that although we want it to happen, they're going to review this again in 2 weeks. Yeah. Now, Paul might spend a fortune getting everything ready for now. 2 weeks' time, it could get worse. It could get worse.
Yeah, I'm going to have to we're running out of time with you, but I would like to plug my own program because we've actually got Punchline Talks. We did a special one, which is weddings and the events industry, and we had 15 people from across the Cotswolds talking about their experience. That'll be on our website today. If you get a chance, please watch that. It is an emotional roller coaster. I must admit, I was getting quite upset myself, and with these people telling us very, very candidly about how much money they'd lost, where they saw themselves. I asked one guy, what's next for you? And he said, I'm going to run out of money in 2 weeks. Now, this is a chap who used to employ 500 people, run a very, very good, successful event management company, and it is literally going to go down the toilet. And they don't understand how the wedding industry can only seat 15 people. It's a mare for them. We could talk about this forever, but it leads me on to Esther. Let's get to some good news. Let's get to some really positive news, because this is the digital forum. This is about the regeneration of King's Square, the bus shelter, all the rest of it. Esther, I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited that you've actually gone to a local regional builder as well. I hope you use regional and local suppliers, and from the architects to the skip companies to the whatever, because it's so important. We need as much cash staying within the city, within the county as possible. Can you give us your latest update?
Yeah, I can do. And I'm glad that I can hopefully be a bit more positive. And sometimes listening to what you've all been saying this morning, I feel a bit almost slightly guilty that actually, from our perspective, things are really moving, and it's in a very positive direction for the quarter. I'm sat at the moment just above King Square, and we'll be going out shortly to have a look at how progress is moving on site. It is with a local company, E.G. Carters, who are doing an absolutely tremendous job. We were so pleased that they were the successful bidder to do the work, and so far they have gone at pace at it. And for those people that haven't been coming into the city for obvious reasons, I think you'll notice dramatic change when you next walk through, which is really exciting. And to be frank, blink and it will be done. It's going to be a very quick process, and hopefully it will give us plenty of good positive stories and things to look forward to for the course of next year. So they are, as I said, on site at the moment, and we'll be looking at the first pieces of the new granite sculpture to be delivered in January, which is going to be a really, really big milestone. And then the fountains as well will start to be to go in February, so those will start to be put forward. If people are interested, there's going to be a video camera link, so you'll be able to actually view it from your rooms at home during the sort of lockdown period that we're still looking like we're going to be going into, so that you'll be able to sit there and have a view on it and see it on a daily basis if you really want to. But it is exciting. We're looking at starting to look with the City Council at the way we're going to be able to launch it next autumn, and I think it's safe to say that we're all very hopeful that that's going to be able to be a really big celebration, and one that we can all potentially take part in and actually be in close proximity for would be even better. So yeah, it will be the first sort of thing that you'll see coming out of the ground for King's Quarter, hopefully swiftly followed by the start on site for the first half of phase 1, again sort of spring next year. That's what we're hoping for. So there's going to be lots of activity and lots of cranes, and hopefully, as you said, lots of construction jobs in the first instance.
I always get very excited with cranes in the
Me too.
of Gloucestershire, because it's about regeneration, it's about change, and I was a board member of the Gloucester Urban Regeneration Company, and did that for 8 years, as you know, and this really is the last piece of the jigsaw. I've written about the last piece of the jigsaw so many times, and this is going to be it, really. So I'm very excited about it, Esther. Very excited that you're here today. Is there one piece of the development that really excites you?
It was. I mean, I think, gosh, that's a really hard question to answer, Mark, because you can tell I'm quite passionate about it, and there's quite a few things to pick out. I am, as a mum, I am actually really quite excited about the fountains, and I've got kids, who I'm sure that will really enjoy being brought up here for when it is open and running, and having the opportunity to run through that and get themselves absolutely soaked to the skin. So there's that I'm really looking forward to. What I'm really interested in, and what I believe we will be successful in achieving, is I want this to be a regeneration project that's actually built from the ground up. So we are talking to with the City Council about ways in which we can ensure that the social value impact from all of the projects will be maximised. And I think that starts, as I said, literally from the ground up. So talking to local community groups to really understand what specific needs, and that might not necessarily be associated in geographic area with the quarter, it might be other parts of the city, and I'm really keen to make sure that takes place. And equally, I'm very keen to make sure that we are adequately tied in to the various universities and colleges in the county, to make sure that when we have the 1,200 jobs which we're anticipating, we'll be able to be created as a result of the construction and the new offices, that actually that those jobs are as accessible to as many members of the community as possible, and we have an opportunity to upskill. We've got 3 years to do that, and that's something that you all, I'm sure, guess that needs to start now. So that's something we're starting to turn our attention to.
And you know what, that is a fantastic place to finish. We normally do a punchline review here and go over some of the stories for the week, but we've actually run out of time. I'm going to try and keep to our normal time. I'd just like to say a big thank you, by the way, to this is not a sponsorship thing, to Hawkins and Brimble, who kindly, who I interviewed this week, actually, Stephen Short from that'll be the next week's big interview. Today is actually Siobhan Bailey, the MP for Spare. But as I've been given stuff, the other thing, I'm just going to show this as well. This is the new Advent calendar from Allstones. And if you open a little box, I hope they don't mind me saying it, if you open the box, what they've done is they've given £12,000 to charity. And if you open the box, each day is a different amount for the charity. So, you know, day one. So it's absolutely amazing. In box number one, I couldn't resist it when Simon Ford gave me to yesterday. I did actually open box number one and ate it straight away without thinking. So I won't tell you who's number one. You have to get a calendar. Anyway, what a fantastic £12,000. Allstones. These keeps going away. The other thing, I went to somebody else to Malvern Tires, and they gave me this Pirelli calendar. That is the calendar.
Oh, wow.
This is a serious calendar.
I wondered what you were going to open up.
Yeah,
and
I was wondering. I was worried then.
Well, there is that. Rob Freeman gave me that. Thank you,
relief.
Rob Freeman. A very unusual, the most expensive calendar I've ever seen. And the other one I've got to give a quick plug to Neptune Rum, who also gave me these fine bottles of spice rum, which I did participate in the with James from as we did the interview. Well, I don't know if any of you watched it, but
is this a disclaimer for your gift register, Mark?
Well, it's quite funny because we ended up chatting for a bit longer, and I think we had both had a little bit of red noses at the end of it. I mean, I couldn't handle too much of it. It's absolutely fantastic red rum. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you ever so much, guys, for joining us. I hope you join us next week. Punchline Talks. All the very best to you and yours. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mark.